We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual relationship to this land and seek to honor the living traditions of the Abenaki. We humbly hope to learn from them how we can better live in harmony, peace, and justice.
Good morning, and welcome to our Sunday morning service. My name is Abby Sessions. I'm a member of this congregation, and this morning I serve as your worship associate for a service led by our minister, the Reverend Barnaby Feeder. Whether you come every Sunday, occasionally, or are with us for the very first time, we are glad you are here at CVUUS, the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. If this is your first time attending a service with us, please email us so that we can share more about who we are and what we do and learn more about you. If you have a milestone or passage to share and you haven't already sent it, please put it in the chat so Reverend Barnaby can share it. Our weekly Zoom coffee hour will happen immediately after the service. If you're on Zoom, just stay put. If you're on YouTube, transfer to Zoom, and Jordan will work his magic and get you into a small group for an informal chat. There are many ways for us to connect with one another in addition to our Sunday services. The best way these days to stay in touch with all the many activities going on at CVUUS, even in these socially distant times, is to read the weekly email blast. That's why if you are new, please let us know so we can ensure that you are on the blast email list. You'll hear later in this service about our work with the Charter House in Middlebury, where Alan Moore has been leading CVUUS participation in their efforts to aid aid those who are experiencing homelessness. Please see our website for more information. Second, Lori Borden, the head of End of Life Services, extends this invitation. End of Life is offering a ceremony of remembrance. They're calling Grace Within Grief. All are welcome to join for this free online community support gathering where we will create a moment to grieve together, honoring our losses with a candle lighting Thursday, December 10th from 5 to 6 p.m. Please contact Lori Borden for your Zoom invitation at 388-4111 or lborden@endoflifevt.org. Again, that's 388-4111. Lori Borden. And finally, this week we will be opening our sanctuary for visiting, contemplation, meditation, and appreciation of the various holiday displays which members have organized in different parts of the sanctuary. Barnaby will be sending a sign up for this week to coordinate times for safe visiting for the rest of December. Our call to worship today, some of you may recognize, as the words to the lovely song with which Kate began our service, "Let There Be Light." I've made a slight adaptation from the traditional words. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be understanding. Let all the nations gather. Let them be face to face. Open our lips. Open our minds to ponder. Open the door of concord, opening into grace. Perish the sword. Perish the angry judgment. Perish the bombs and hunger. Perish the fight for gain. Let there be light. Open our hearts to wonder. Perish the way of terror. Hallowed be this world. Now's the time when we light the chalice. I invite you to say the words with me as they scroll across the screen after Reverend Barnaby lights our adult chalice and the children's chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Good morning. It was nice to see kids interspersed in the song that I just sang. A huge thanks to Richard Hopkins for working on that for me and many other things. So it's the first Sunday in December, and what that means usually is that we decorate our holiday tree in the sanctuary. So for several years, that's what we've done as the Time for All Ages on this Sunday. So I'm there, we have a tree, there's some lights on it, but nothing more. Decorations that the kids have made over the years and that people have brought in are lying on a table. I say a little bit. I invite kids to come up and hang ornaments. I invite anybody to come up and hang ornaments. We hang the ornament that the kids have made that year for the guests at our table fundraiser. Then there's a time when I have these purple ribbons and people are invited to come up and write the name of someone who is no longer with us in body, but still very much with us in spirit. And they can tie those on. And it's a big group thing. And then for weeks afterwards, people can just come and go as they like to the tree and continue to hang things. This year, obviously, it's a different year. So I was thinking, how can I do this? I don't want to just go in and, show you a picture of the tree all decorated, because that really misses the point for me of decorating the tree, which is a community thing. And to me, the tree is something that when we look at it, it represents all of us, right? There's many ornaments. They're very different. Some are simple and quiet. Some are loud and boisterous and obvious and colorful. Some are very quiet ribbons that you would need to get very close to see what's going on there. And to me, that's what our group is, right? That's all of us. So I came up with an idea. It's not as good as the real thing with people in person, but it's what I got. So I'm going to share my screen. And show you what I figured out. All right, let me just get this small. Okay, so here's me in the sanctuary with our tree, looking kind of sad because there's nothing on the tree yet. Where is everybody? It's just me. And here's all the ornaments. So what I decided to do was, we have 70 kids in our community still this year. And so I picked out exactly 70 ornaments and lay them out. And it's a big variety. So some of them are ones that we've had from the very first time I made ornaments 8 years ago, I think 8 years ago. And there's one from this year. If I show a close-up, so maybe if you look at these, especially kids, you may see one that you made. There's some ornaments, every year we make them. So some of them are from that. The one here, I don't know if you can see my little arrow moving around here or not, but in the bottom right-hand corner, the Orozco Hammonds, I think, brought that one in. There's an orange slice up here that's from a time we did a solstice celebration with kids. And Martha Alexander dried out all these orange slices. I don't know what this guy in the upper left-hand corner is. He's like an abominable snowman. I don't know where that one came from. Anyway, big variety. And there's 70 exactly. So that was my way of pulling all the kids in, right? So I put an ornament on for every one of you. So here we go. Let's see how it goes. And it was me alone in the sanctuary. I couldn't bring someone in to take pictures of me. They would have to be from my family. And I tried, but there were issues. So, so it's me taking the pictures too. Dum ba bum ba bum. See, they just magically appear. I just stood and took pictures and somehow the ornaments and everything just showed up. And so there's the complete tree. Yay. And if you look on the top, you'll notice that we have a heart. For years, we had a star made by Journey LaRose, which I loved. It was so sweet. And then it disappeared. I don't know what happened. Maybe her family loved it so much they took it home. But we needed to do something else a couple years ago, so I made a heart. That seemed to me a little more like the right thing to stick on the top of a UU tree. And you'll see that there are 2 more trees this year. So that's something that we're doing this year to celebrate the idea of the 3 sisters that Reverend Barnaby and others have talked about, the 3 sisters of love, compassion, justice, and beauty. So we're the tree of beauty, the beauty of the tree, the beauty of all the people. And the other 2 are going to get decorated too. They're not there yet. But I just love the way this looks. It's like this forest of trees. The other 2 are waiting in the Advent season for things to show up and for some people perhaps to visit them. Now I'm looking a lot happier because look, our tree is decorated. I put 1 purple ribbon on. With the thought of all the people who have put ribbons, so that's kind of a placeholder for all of you who can't go in and tie a ribbon on. So that is put with much, much love for everybody. And I'll close the slideshow with this year's heart ornament, right? This is the ornament that all the kids have been making at home with the ornament kits and then dropping off, and people have been buying a lot of them. We might be running out. We may need to make some more. So thanks to the people buying them, and just a reminder that we did a heart this year because all the different beads represent the diversity, the differences of all of us that together are this thing of beauty. And the heart is because we can't be together in body, but we're very much together in heart, spirit. So that was our tree this year. I wish you all could have come and done it in person, but you were very much there in spirit and in my mind as I hung each ornament one at a time. You didn't get to see me doing all 70 because it would have been too pokey. I hope you like the sped up version. I really love all of you, and it brought me joy to see the completed tree because it did make me think of past Christmases and Hanukkahs and Advent times and solstices, and I look forward to the next tree next year when we will be back together, all together in body and spirit, hanging the tree with our actual hands, all of us. So, I love you. I miss you.
Good morning. My name is Alan Moore, and I was asked by the Donations Ministry to talk a little bit about Charterhouse, this month's Share the Plate recipient. As a local organization, Charterhouse has been an essential part of our community since 2005. I was asked to do this because I'm one of the CVUUS people who currently work on providing food and preparing meals for Charterhouse. This is an activity which CVUUS has been doing for many years, led initially by Sue Grigg and Mary Lou Bright. While they have semi-retired from this activity, we have continued their work with about 15 people who contribute on a regular basis. Normally, we would prepare a hot lunch for about 30 people every third Tuesday. Indeed, before COVID, Charterhouse was serving about 40,000 meals a year and housing 134 people. But starting in March this year, everything changed. Because of COVID, people can no longer stay or eat at Charterhouse, and those who need shelter are now lodged in various locations around town. Charterhouse is now serving 90 people, 3 meals a day, and having to deliver those meals to all 90 individuals twice a day. This has put a huge strain on the staff, volunteers, and financial resources of Charterhouse. Nevertheless, with the help of many organizations around the community, including CVUUS, they continue to do an excellent job of assisting those less fortunate in our community to get through this pandemic. Those of us who have had the privilege of serving those people in person before COVID were able to appreciate firsthand the dedication of Charterhouse staff and the extreme gratitude of the people we have served. I believe that as UUs, indeed as human beings, that we are called to help in any way we can those who are less fortunate than we are. And as our 7th principle states, we are part of the interdependent web of all existence. As a person who has spent all of his professional life working to conserve ecosystems, I know that when any part of an ecosystem is weakened, the entire ecosystem is threatened. Charterhouse and the people it serves are an essential part of our community, our local ecosystem. Let's keep our ecosystem healthy. Your contribution to the plate this month will help Charterhouse to continue to provide meals and other services to those individuals and families in our community who find themselves homeless during this holiday season and beyond.
Thank you, Kate, for the beautiful music, receiving our offering. Poppy, for the wonderful introduction to how the three trees are going to look when they're all decorated and your work with the children. Kate, for the music throughout the service so far, and Alan for introducing us to the donee for this month, Charter House. I now want to invite you into a time of silence. Each week in our service, we know that people come with unspoken prayers and concerns. Sometimes I lead you into this with a reading. Today, I've decided not to do that because so much is going on in our lives and people are stressed in so many different ways. I want to skip that reading and let everybody find their own way into where their heart is this morning. Take this 2 minutes of silence to pray, do meditation, whatever it is, to help you find your inner source of strength and joy at this moment.
Our first reading today is from a short essay on the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which begins this coming Thursday evening. The author, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, was the most prominent Jewish spiritual leader in Britain for the 3 decades up until his death last month. His writings honored diversity and had a global audience outside of Judaism. In this passage, he refers to the Orthodox Hasidic sect of Judaism. There always were 2 ways to live in a world that is often dark and full of tears. We can curse the darkness, or we can light a light. And as the Hasidim say, a little light drives out much darkness. May we all help light up the world. Our second reading consists of 3 of the 3 verses without the chorus of Nighttime Falls, a December song by Ann Hills. Nighttime falls on everyone. Crows race toward the setting sun, couriers of evening, black against the fading blue. The sky grows dark, the stars grow brighter. The west turns gold, the moon glows whiter. We hurry past the windows light as the shops fade too. Nighttime falls on every place. The darkness brings a simple grace as heaven drops its curtain, quieting the noise of day, on wilderness or cities teeming, on lighthouse with its lamp now beaming. And final trains call all aboard to be on their way. Nighttime falls on everything, the blade of grass, the sparrow's wing. The mystery of sleep unravels and our dreams begin. And through the dark, wind, rain, and thunder, we travel on this world of wonder that carries us around the sun to come back again.
Thank you, Abby. And for those of you who aren't in the loop, this is Abby's first Sunday as worship associate. So yay, Abby. Thanks for joining the active part of the team. Abby's been leading the committee behind the scenes for a while now, but she decided to get in front of the camera this week, and we're really glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Even in a normal year, and I'm going to put aside for a moment all the ways that this is not a normal year, I find that there's something compelling about entering into the darkest time of our annual calendar in Vermont and throughout the Northern Hemisphere. As our second reading says so poetically, nighttime falls early on everyone, every place, everything. The reading speaks of our dreams traveling through the dark, wind, rain, and thunder. And sometimes in December, we can even throw in some snow, and you're plunged into deep stillness on top of everything else. The snow is initially beautiful, but its grip in deep darkness can bring depression and sadness if it persists and ices up, even fear. That's not surprising. Darkness brings more running room for our imaginations, including all of the scary stuff that sends us scurrying for the security of warmth, light, and shelter to tide us over at least until sunrise and then all the way to spring. Now, if you make it a year like 2020 has been, subconsciously at least, any emotional or spiritual darkness in our lives becomes that much more ominous. At this very moment in our lives, any comfort is especially precious. And one comfort for me is knowing deep in my bones, although I could never prove it scientifically, that my unknown ancestors and yours have been creating and recreating stories that arm us against winter's challenges since the early days of human language, thousands of years before anything was recorded. Blessed is the ancient story that nurtured joy, hope, faith, or fellowship at this time of year. Blessed is the story that, like a living being, was raised up and selected for over the generations and crossbred into multiple forms of diverse tales that feed and shelter us today. With that in mind, I want to talk about two families of winter stories this morning. First are those surrounding Hanukkah, the Jewish holiday that, as you heard, begins this coming Thursday evening and was honored in the song that Kate played at the end of the meditation, Light One Candle, speaking to the importance of remembering the events of Hanukkah. Now, a number of you have Jewish connections of one sort and know the bare bones story, but for those of you who don't, this song is originally about a battle for Jewish freedom during a time Israel was occupied by the Greek culture, 200 years before the birth of Jesus. And a band of rebels who rejected the idea that they could not openly practice their faith managed to regain control of Jerusalem and the main temple in Jerusalem, which had been closed and had decayed over the years. And they expelled the Syrian rulers that the Greeks had appointed to control Israel. They purified the temple, and then they declared an 8-day celebration to reopen the temple. That's what's in the Bible, or at least what Christians consider the Bible. The Jews don't actually consider this Holy Scripture, but they have these stories. It doesn't say anything about the miracle of the lights, which you've heard about. It says that the light was relit in the temple. But later it was decided, and stories were told, that there was only enough oil for that light to burn for 1 day of the 8 it needed for the temple to be fully purified. And yet, after they, through their faith, lit that light, it kept burning through all 8 days. And that became the oil miracle story, long after the actual temple had been destroyed by the Romans. It was a story of Jewish freedom that had to be changed because the people who had thrown out the Syrians turned out to be thugs, and their reign of power led to Rome replacing Greece as the foreign power dominating Israel. You really couldn't tell a wonderful story about the actual history. And so the miracle of the oil and the lights began. The story needed to be changed to survive. And over the years, food elements were added, such as cooking potato latkes in the oils that symbolized the oil in the temple, and dreidel spinning, an ancient top game. The dreidel tops were Jewish letters were added to them, and lots of stories grew up about what the meaning of those letters were, and it made the holiday much more child-friendly. You can see all of this on display in our sanctuary now under the Star of David on the west wall of the sanctuary, thanks to Penelope Markle and others who have set up a Jewish portion of the sanctuary for our December visits. But I want to focus specifically on the role of light in these stories, because we're talking about light in dark times and the need to light lights against the dark. I was very moved by the insights of the late Rabbi Sachs. In a series of 8 short talks on Hanukkah, one for each day, that he prepared shortly before he died. I chose the end of one of these stories for our first reading, where it speaks of our choices being to curse the darkness or light lights to help us overcome oppression and fear. I want now to take a little break and share his entire message leading up to that reading in honor of today being the official end of the 30-day period mourning his death. Can you please play this little snippet of Rabbi Sachs?
Lighters in the air, more fire, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire, more fire. Lighters in the air, more fire. Let's go, you lit it. Now we shall revisit the burning bushes in your building, or perhaps you are forgetting.
There is more than one command in Judaism to light lights. There are 3. There are the Shabbos candles and the Havdalah candles and the Hanukkah candles. The difference between them is that Shabbos candles represent Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. Shabbos candles are lit indoors. They are, if you like, Judaism's inner light, the light of the sanctity of marriage and the holiness of home. The Hanukkah candles used to be lit outside the front door. It was only fear of persecution that took the Hanukkah lights back inside. And in recent times, the Lubavitcher Rebbe introduced the custom of lighting giant menorahs in public places to bring back that original spirit of the day. Hanukkah candles are the light Judaism brings to the outside world when we are unafraid to announce our identity in public, live by our principles, and fight, if necessary, for our freedom. As for the Havdalah candle, which is always made up of several wicks woven together, it represents the fusion of the two, the inner light of Shabbos joined to the outer light that we make during the 6 days of the week when we go out into the world and live our faith in public. When we live as Jews in private, filling our homes with the light of the Shekhinah. When we live as Jews in public, bringing the light of hope to others. And when we live both of them together, then we really bring light to the world. There always were two ways to live in a world that is often dark and full of tears. We can curse the darkness, or we can light a light. And as the Hasidim always used to say, a little light drives out much darkness. May we all help light up the world. Chanukah Sameach. Happy Chanukah.
So there's Rabbi Sachs talking about the importance of living our values out in the world, being part of the Hanukkah story. Now, the Hanukkah family of stories is rooted in a portion of the Bible that Christians view as holy, I said, but Jews don't. Ironically, Hanukkah owes a lot of its current traditions and prominence among Jews to its proximity to Christmas. As Christmas became a bigger and bigger Christian holiday, accumulating its own storehouse of stories and traditions, Jewish families searching for ways to maintain their identity expanded the role of Hanukkah in their lives. Today, most people forget that Christmas started out as a secondary holiday in Christianity. Although there are 4 gospel stories in the Bible telling the life of Jesus, only 2 of them, those of Matthew and Luke, even mention the story of Jesus's birth. It's just not important enough to be in all of them. Easter, the collection of stories surrounding the final days of Jesus as a human being on earth, his crucifixion and resurrection, that's the climax of all 4 gospels and the subject of numerous other biblical references. The Puritans who settled New England tried to eliminate any celebration of this minor holiday of Christmas, which they saw as a poor excuse for midwinter drinking and other irreverent behavior. They weren't the first to note that nothing in the Bible suggests that Jesus was born in the winter. The date assigned for Christmas was a blatant move by early church fathers to co-opt the popularity of pagan solstice holidays in Rome and Northern Europe. Now, I'm not going to go into it in detail today, but Unitarians played a big role in popularizing Christmas as we know it today in the United States, a time of joy and family life. They viewed Christmas as a chance to begin religious education of children, something the Puritans weren't so interested in. The bigger Christmas became, the more important the period of preparations for it, known as Advent, became as well. And that's the modern part of the Christmas story that fascinates me the most, because it involves the universal spiritual disciplines of waiting, both passive waiting and active waiting. So there's numerous religions that flourish without Jesus, but every religion has to say something about how we human beings wait, because that is such an important part of our lives. I was out recently walking with Pan on Creek Road, and Pan was in one of his phases where he was just moving down the road with his nose looking for mice and things like that, and didn't even look up. And he walked within 20 feet of a big red-tailed hawk perched in a tree near the road. And I was walking behind, and by the time I got there, the hawk said, well, that first thing went right by without looking at me. Maybe the next one will too. And he just sat there, and I turned and I looked at him, and I've never seen a predator that close so still. And you could look at that and you could say, that hawk is in a very passive waiting mode. It's just sitting, waiting to see what happens next. Or you could imagine its eyes focused on me and the surrounding and say, this is an extremely active mode. It's planning all kinds of things. It's thinking about all kinds of possibilities. And it struck me that in our lives too, it's really, really hard to discern sometimes when we're in an active waiting mode and when we're in a passive waiting mode. COVID gives a very important example. We're all in a somewhat passive position waiting for the vaccines to arrive. But we also have all of these active aspects of our lives that involve being still, isolating. Sometimes it's hard to tell when we're active and when we're passive. So what does it mean for us at these times that this act of waiting is so important to understand, and how we do it is so important to understand? I think what's going on in our sanctuary this month is part of that. We can't be together in time, so we figured out a way to be together in place over time. And we're hoping in the month, everybody who feels safe when they see the precautions we take will go into the sanctuary, have some time of silence, or to listen to music that we'll provide, look around at the displays of different kinds of spirituality, sit wherever in the room fits their spirituality, and take in memories of that space, take in the power of that space to bring us joy and to prepare us to go forward with our lives. I want to share one more story of active versus passive waiting. The UN has had an annual conference dealing with climate change for the last few years. And an important part of the conference is to bring youth leaders into the climate movement. But they decided this year, because of COVID, they couldn't have the conference and they put it off for a year. What happened was a whole bunch of youth climate leaders around the world, inspired by Greta Thunberg and her Fridays for the Future movement, went ahead and said, well, you can't cancel our conference. We're going to have the conference. And they created an online conference that had many, many more young delegates, more women, more marginalized people than the UN conference had. So they are both ways of waiting and preparing for our world's climate to change. But the youth made it an active form of waiting and said, we can't be passive because of COVID for another year. There's just too much going on. So there's a lot of invitations for us to understand who we are in the quality of attention we pay to what we hold sacred and how we reflect that in our waiting. Now, many people think a big part of this waiting has to be slowing down, moving out of our daily lives, which are so busy, to slow down and focus on what's sacred. Our own Bill McKibben, our neighbor, so well known for his work in climate change, calls Advent the time to listen for footsteps. You can't hear footsteps when you're running yourself. You have to slow down, he said. There's an anonymous saying, let's approach Christmas with expectant hush rather than last minute rush. Implicit in both of these things is understanding the meaning of Christmas and what it might mean for God to arrive on earth in the form of a vulnerable baby involves stopping regular life, slowing down, pulling back. And it feels a little bit passive to me, even if deeply open-hearted and hopeful. So I think we can do a little bit better as CVUUS, especially if we listen to that counsel from Hanukkah of actively lighting lights in the world. I think we can be out there preparing the world to move forward toward that which we're hoping for. You know, when you light that light, it not only shows that we're here, it not only shows that we turn on the lights in the sanctuary, it shows we have that sanctuary filled with all the potential we have as a congregation. It also invite you to think about who you are in this moment when you light that light and you can see around you and where you are better. I invite you to join me in thinking of yourself as a servant of the spirit of life-giving love, or as a teacher for the spirit, or a nurse for it, a caretaker of any sort, or maybe even when times demand it, a defender of that spirit. Whatever the personality of the waiting is that fits you in this time, let's be clear that we are all waiting for the outcome of mysteries and great changes that we can't fully comprehend from where we stand now. That's why there is an element of waiting instead of full out action. But how we do this illuminates not just that we're here, not just our presence, but it shows us a little bit better where we want to go and our progress toward it. So Henry Nouwen, a wonderful Catholic thinker who spent a lot of time taking care of people who had various kinds of mental health and other disabilities, spent a lot of time thinking about that near relative of waiting called patience. And what he said of patience is true, I believe, of waiting. It asks us to live the moment to the fullest, to be completely present to the moment, to taste the here and now, to be where we are. So I hope that we can make sure that we are not just listening to these stories of the season, but we are figuring out what our role is in them, how we continue to make them our stories, not just those that we've inherited from the past. Blessed be, and amen. Many of you will recognize the words of that great Advent hymn, People Look East. And it tells us to do something active, prepare the table for love the guest. Such an ironic thing to be asking of us at a time when we're being told not to have any guests in our home. And I think that the one thing we can remember that is crucially important to our survival, and I ask you to take with you as you go forth this week, is that there are some guests you can never turn away and hope to thrive yourself. And the most important of all of these is love in whatever form it comes to your door. Blessed be, amen.
Oh come, Emmanuel, and with your captive children dwell. Give comfort to all exiles here, and to the aching heart bid cheer. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as love to dwell. Oh, come, you splendor very bright, as joy that never yields to might. Oh, come and turn all hearts to peace, that greed and war at last is here.